Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's time that we started exercising our jurisdiction.
A call to temporarily stop cutting old-growth trees on Vancouver Island. Also,
this has been distressing for all of us.
Inside Royal Columbian Hospital's COVID unit, and the burnout faced by frontline workers.
Like, I can't comprehend how can someone do that.
Horrific attack. Why police suspect the hit and run of an entire family may be fueled by hate.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Canadians across the country are reeling. Vigils being held tonight, including here in Vancouver. Police in London, Ontario are calling it a premeditated hit and run, targeting a family because of their Islamic faith. A truck hit the family as they were out for an evening walk. 4 people are dead and a 9-year-old is without parents. Magda Gabrisalasa has our top story tonight.
You can still see the skid marks right here. What happened here last night is being called an act of mass murder by the mayor of this city. We know that 3 generations of a Muslim family were out here walking last night, and we're told that a black pickup truck jumped the curb, striking the family. A 74-year-old woman died here at the scene. A man and woman in their 40s and a 15-year-old girl later died. In hospital with serious injuries is a 9-year-old boy. Now, police tell us that the suspect fled the scene. He was arrested minutes later, and they say at the time he was wearing a vest that looked like body armor. And now police are saying this was no accident.
We believe that this was an intentional act and that the victims of this horrific incident were targeted. We believe the victims were targeted because of their Islamic faith.
The community is shaken here, especially the Muslim community. I spoke with a man who says he knows the family, and he said that they regularly went out for walks. Here's how he reacted when he heard that this could possibly be hate motivated.
If that is true, that's really evil. Like, I can't comprehend how can someone do that.
The accused, Nathan Veltman, now faces murder and attempted murder charges, but based on the fact that police believe these victims were targeted because they were Muslim, more charges could be coming. Magda Gabrisalasa, CBC News, London.
BC's COVID caseload is going down while vaccinations go up. 72% of all eligible British Columbians 12 and older have had 1 dose. Tanya Fletcher joins us now. Tanya, okay, as of today, people who received AstraZeneca as their first dose are starting to get invitations to book their second dose.
Yeah, that's right. Many are still deciding whether to stick with AstraZeneca for their booster shot or to choose one of the mRNA vaccines like Pfizer or Moderna instead. So Deputy Provincial Health Officer Dr. Reka Gustafson was asked about the timing of those second doses and whether the province will inform people when they're booking which date they'll be able to receive one type of vaccine versus which date they'd be able to receive the other type.
That kind of precision is unlikely to be available to people. We are informing people about when when groups of individuals will be invited for a second dose of vaccination, as well as general parameters about when groups of individuals are going to be able to receive their vaccine. And of course, it all depends on vaccine supplies.
Now, it's still unclear what will happen to any leftover AstraZeneca doses if enough people choose the other type for their booster shot. But the province says second doses, yes, are ramping up, but first doses are still driving the province's immunization effort. Let's take a look at where we're at. So BC has administered upwards of 3.6 million shots in total. That's the red line. The overwhelming majority, the yellow line there, it's about 3.3 million, are first doses. And right now, look at the very bottom at the second doses. That's the gray line. That accounts right now for about 314,000 doses. You can see that gray line just starting to rise now. That will rise sharply as the cases, first doses, begin to drop off up above there. And health officials are also starting to plan a shift away from managing COVID-19 as a pandemic emergency to instead focus on pandemic recovery. Anita?
Okay, thanks, Tanya. BC is reporting 12 more COVID-19 deaths and 481 new cases over the weekend. 74% of adults have now received at least one dose of the COVID vaccine, but there are still 199 people in hospital. 63 of those are in intensive care and 38 are requiring mechanical ventilation. Now, with virus numbers decreasing, it's still clear the fight is far from over when you enter any of Fraser Health's COVID hospitals. Tonight, Belpuri and Christian Amundsen get a look inside Royal Columbian Hospital's ICU, where there's another crisis emerging that will very likely outlast the pandemic.
It's a relentless frontline fight. The battle against COVID, a virus doctors and nurses call the beast. Each room is a maze of machines and medical equipment.
Gonna give you a suction down your breathing tube here, Jeremy. Might make you cough.
Jeremy Johnson hasn't been able to breathe on his own for 47 days, even though he no longer has COVID.
It's all the side effects from COVID is what he's now dealing with. So he makes baby steps, and then he takes like 3 steps back.
Inserting tubes in patients' airways or intubating comes with uncertainties.
The risks and benefits for some of these procedures is developing other infections. Trying to save someone's life, there's always those risks and benefits. So he's still quite sick. He's still in septic shock.
ICU staff are the closest to the pressure and the risk.
I think we have to really trust in what we do for our personal protective equipment, our PPE. We're fitted with N95 respirators. Most recently, we have reusable ones that help keep the virus out of our bodies. But exposure is always a risk. It's a risk of the job.
The emotional stress is exhausting.
And as we donned what I call the mask of COVID-19, there was this vaguely dehumanizing effect that happened. I could no longer read my colleagues' faces. I could no longer sense their emotion when they were feeling overwhelmed or nervous or needed backup, as we always have been able to read each other. We've gotten very good at reading each other's eyes. We look into them deeply and they tell a story.
It's a story about the breaking point. Royal Columbian Hospital has 16 ICU beds, but averaged 42 patients at a time during COVID at its worst.
May I end up working 20 out of 31 days, that's a lot more than what the average. You typically work between 12 and 14 shifts in a month.
It's a story about the heartache. Until this week, there were no visitors in the ICU, not even during end of life. This experience with one patient and his wife isn't unique.
My picture was a small little face in the corner of the screen, and while she was on the FaceTime call, and she was crying her eyes out and reminding him of their wedding day and their little kids and how she will protect them. And as we took him off life support, and his heart rate slowly started to drop down and his blood pressure started to fade away, and it was me that was holding his hand, and as a family we're just sitting on a square screen, and that's cruel to be a part of that in person, but we were the closest people that could provide that care and that touch at that moment.
A lot of recovery is yet to come.
You'd asked before about what I think the next concerns are. I think it's for how our healthcare system is doing, how the healthcare workers are doing through this, and how they recover. I'm concerned for some of their mental health, and I'm concerned for their burnout.
RCH isn't the only COVID center in the region, but it's the only one equipped with heart-lung bypass machines for patients who can't breathe at all, not even with a ventilator. The sickest of the sick COVID patients in the region come to this ICU. In the first and second wave, those patients were mostly in their 80s and 90s. In the third wave, the average age is considerably younger.
Poor guy.
He's diabetic too, right? So it's just not I feel so bad for him.
Jeremy Johnson is 44. He spent his birthday here alone and heavily sedated. Only last week, his wife and their boys were able to visit for the first time since April 21st.
But it was nice to, let him feel our touch, and let him hear my voice next to him instead of being on a FaceTime.
Rika Johnson is actually a nurse at RCH, but on leave.
Code Blue Healthcare Center, ICU, bed 16. Code Blue Healthcare Center, ICU, bed 16.
Because when this happens, it's just too much.
That's not his bed, but still that.
Jeremy is in bed 8.
Hi, Jeremy. It's Serafina from Respiratory. I'm just going to take a listen to your breathing here.
It continues to be a long haul for Jeremy and those who care for him.
It started out as fear because you don't know, and then exhaustion, and then there'd be frustration because it wasn't going away. And then there was also times of like uplift, like the 7 p.m. cheer. That helped. That kept us going.
What also keeps them going is behind every COVID statistic, there's a name and a story. Belle Puri, CBC News, New Westminster.
A police officer who shot and killed a BC Indigenous woman during a wellness check last year will not be charged. 26-year-old Chantal Moore died last year in New Brunswick. Dan Burrett joins us with more on the decision. Dan, why won't the officer be charged?
Anita, Crown lawyers in New Brunswick say there is no reasonable prospect the officer would be convicted based on the evidence they have. Chantal Moore was killed almost 1 year ago to the day. She was a member of the Clayoquot First Nation on Vancouver Island and moved to New Brunswick to be near her family. The Crown's report says Moore's boyfriend called police on June 4th of last year after he received worrying messages from her Facebook account. Witnesses claim she'd been drinking that night. 2 officers were dispatched for a wellness check. One of them went to her apartment door, and after an alleged altercation, the officer claims Moore charged him with a knife. The report says the officer fired 4 shots and killed Moore. Prosecutors call it regrettable, but said there was no reasonable chance the officer would be found guilty with the evidence they had. Family members and Indigenous leaders have been calling for charges and accountability for the past year. Some Indigenous leaders in BC say they're not surprised by this decision.
We shall continue to advocate for justice for Chantal and, changing the de-escalation policy, changing wellness checks, all those kinds of things. We're not gonna give up. And of course, the coroner's report inquiry is coming up on December the 6th. There is an investigation under the Police Act.
Moore's family says it is assessing its next steps. Meanwhile, the First Nations Leadership Council in BC says it is deeply disappointed by the fact no charges will be laid against that officer. Anita?
Thanks, Dan. An 80-year-old man with dementia is in intensive care after being stabbed randomly in Chilliwack. A second man, 58 years old, was also stabbed in an unprovoked attack. Both incidents happened around Mary Street last night. Police are looking for a Caucasian male with frizzy, dark brown hair. He's described as being 6 feet tall with a slim to medium build. He was said to be wearing dirty jeans and a patterned blue top. Anyone with information is asked to contact Chilliwack RCMP. And an 11-year-old and his father are seriously hurt after a high-speed chase by police involving a shootout. Now the Independent Investigations Office is involved.
It's very unusual to have a circumstance such as this where there is a young child involved. And all of that will go into the mix to, at the end of the day, for us to make our decision.
The IIO says gunfire was exchanged between both the officers and suspect. RCMP chased a white Ford F-350 pulling a flat-deck trailer that was possibly stolen down Highway 5A. Police used a spike belt to try stalling the truck. The suspect vehicle kept going for 5 more kilometers, eventually coming to a stop on Highway 8 near Snake Road and Highway 97C. Anyone with information or video is asked to contact the IIO. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe here now with the forecast. Joe, I woke up to some gorgeous sunshine this morning. Can't complain, but I did see some dark clouds all around me, so perhaps it wasn't as good everywhere.
You're right. We did have some pockets of showers today, but I also enjoyed waking up to the sunshine, but it was chilly, and I'm not the only one throwing out the very official term January. In fact, let's take a quick look at the current temperatures out there. We were below seasonal for the past couple of days, just a 15 right now at YVR, and that's all thanks to this swirling low that will be our story for the next few days. So look for more dark clouds, but also some sunny breaks, a few showers, and cooler temps. I'll get you through to a warm up, though, coming up later on in the show, Anita.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Cam Cathcart is being remembered tonight for his 40-year broadcasting career and as a tireless volunteer for veterans. Cathcart was a foreign reporter, producer, and on-air host for CBC Radio and television. After he retired from journalism, Cathcart was the face of the Victory Square Remembrance Day ceremony for many years. Mayor Kennedy Stewart says Cathcart's passing was a tremendous loss for the city. Cam Cathcart died Saturday at age 83. And during the NHL playoffs on CBC, just a reminder of how and where you can watch this show. We'll be on every weekday at 6 p.m. online, streaming on CBC Gem, YouTube, and Facebook, and then we will be on TV after the hockey game each evening. Those times will vary depending on when the game starts and when it ends. You can always watch our show on demand, streaming at our website, cbc.ca/BC. A possible halt to old-growth logging on the island. Why some First Nations are calling for a deferral. Next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. One of Vancouver's most iconic recording studios has been plagued with unexplainable radio interference. It's caused the company to lose time, money, and potentially their reputation. As Joel Ballard reports, the company has been sent on a wild goose chase to determine the cause.
From underneath the trees, we watch the sky.
Vancouver's Armory Studios is used to hosting big international artists, but lately, mysterious radio interference is putting all of that at risk.
We noticed that there was some high-frequency interference in the microphones in some of them.
But the team has no idea where it's coming from. This was back in December. The sound is still ongoing.
We've already lost money. We're already paying a lot more tech, for Corey and my time, and it's wasted time in sessions, and we've even lost a session.
A noisy recording studio can be the kiss of death.
You have people that are very, very talented, very exacting, very demanding. If they hear a noise in here, they're going to walk.
So the team at Armory began to investigate the interference. They believe they were able to pinpoint the problem to cell phone towers on a building next door owned by Rogers. Rogers denies that their equipment is at fault, but has worked with Armory to try and fix the problem.
The organization of ISCD, the governing body for this, asked Rogers to do a shutdown of their towers, and I was here, and when they shut it down, it's completely quiet.
The noise disappeared, something that was acknowledged in an email by a Rogers employee investigating the problem. Once the towers were back on, the sound returned. But ultimately, both Rogers and the ISCD determined that the cell towers are operating within their licensed levels, and the root of the issue is unclear. An email from a Rogers investigator raises several possibilities, including someone in the neighborhood using an illegal cell signal booster. In a different email, a member of ISCD wrote, "It's up to the studio to fix the problem."
Absolutely. We have a world brand that we rely on, and that's quality. It's put a lot of stress on me.
Still, Rogers denies any responsibility. But after the CBC reached out to the telecom, it decided to hire a technician to come and investigate the problem. The team at Armory is just hopeful that it will finally get some answers, so they can get back to doing what they love. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Stick with us. We'll be back in a few moments with what's happening on southern Vancouver Island and the attempt to stop old-growth logging at Fairy Creek. A development today in that ongoing battle to preserve an old-growth forest on Vancouver Island. 3 BC First Nations have asked that logging stop until they can create their own management plan. Greg Rasmussen now on what that means for the protesters at Fairy Creek and their blockades.
In your portion of the document,
the stroke of a pen may halt one of the largest conservation battles in recent years. 3 First Nations issued a directive calling for a 2-year deferral on old-growth logging in their traditional territory on Vancouver Island.
It's very significant. We want to, manage our resources in a way that's acceptable to our people, and it's time that we started exercising our jurisdiction.
Those First Nations had initially agreed to the logging, but now say it's time for fresh consultations. At stake, the Fairy Creek watershed, which holds some of the last old-growth trees on Vancouver Island. The province had granted forestry company Teal Jones permission to start logging its northern edges. Since losing a court battle, old-growth logging opponents have been doing their best to stop the chainsaws, creating complex obstacles for the RCMP to remove, even cementing themselves into tubes stuck into the ground. More than 170 people have been arrested. They say trees up to 1,000 years old are increasingly rare and vital. According to the Sierra Club, original old growth on Vancouver Island has gone from this to less than 10% of the original forest.
It's potentially very good news for Fairy Creek, but we don't know yet.
This longtime activist says she's optimistic, but reserving judgment.
And there's actually blockades and protests in the entire region. So at this point, I think everyone's still waiting for the maps and clarity.
That clarity will come from the provincial government.
We are working on that, and with respect and respecting the decisions of the Dididat, the Pachidat, and the Hawaiiat.
If all the parties can agree on a new plan, it could mean a pause in this latest war in the woods. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Vancouver.
And we have an update tonight from the RCMP. Police say the injunction order against protesters remains in place, and RCMP will continue to enforce it. Protesters say they welcome the news, but are vowing to stay on to fight until they get more details. Well, these skateboards are being sold off for a cause, the Indigenous inspiration and the people they're hoping to help. Next.
The British Columbia government said in the speech from the throne today, the province is lucky it has not had to resort to nuclear power to meet its energy needs. Concerned about safety, BC asked the federal government to look into a controversial nuclear power plant scheduled to be built in Washington state, just south of the Canadian border. At the same time the speech from the throne was being read in Victoria, a royal commission was underway in Kelowna, BC, determining whether uranium, the fuel used in nuclear plants, will be mined in the province. Colin Hoth reports.
It's becoming clear that there are major untapped resources of uranium in the hills of southern and central BC. The mining companies have already invested millions proving up deposits that they say can be more safely handled than the type of ore that's found elsewhere. These are easily accessible sites that could be worked with open pit mines.
Where the optimism is that here companies have come in, they found a new type of deposit that was totally unknown when we go back 10 or 15 years ago, and we're just starting to really sink our teeth into it.
The 3-man Royal Commission has the job of examining the industry's claim that BC can have a safe and very profitable uranium industry.
Squeeze together to form a rock.
But Commission Chairman David Bates says the longer-term national implications of provincial policy must also be assessed.
One could foresee a situation in which it was urgently needed uranium in Western Canada for the continued or even the maintenance of any kind of prosperity in Ontario and Quebec. The moral pressure on British Columbians, if there was a real appeal for help from Ontario, would be substantial, wouldn't it? And it would be hard to resist if you're a Canadian, I think.
The public hearings bring the industry spokesman face to face with the environmental groups, who see in this battle to keep BC nuclear free that important precedents are being set.
If we stay nuclear free, except for this exploration which we have, will be a lesson to the world and an incentive to the world too, to show how we can do it. We don't need nuclear electricity. We have hydro, geothermal, tidal, solar. We have it here, the wind. We don't need it, and we're only exporting it. Hence, we're taking all the risk with very little or no benefit. It's a bad proposition.
The inquiry is expected to last 18 months. Meanwhile, a moratorium on uranium development in BC remains in effect. Colin Holtz, CBC News, Kelowna.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Join CBC Vancouver News at 6 host Anita Bathe at 2 amazing events this June. CBC Vancouver is a proud returning media sponsor of the Indian Summer Festival. Get your tickets today. And on June 23rd, Anita will moderate a panel of medical experts at UBC Dialogue Medical Innovations. Where is technology leading us? Learn more at alumni.ubc.ca.
Time now for a check of the weather again with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Okay, so sunshine today worked out pretty well. I'm pretty happy. What do we have in store for the next few days?
You know, Anita, I think there is something for everyone in the next 5-day forecast, which means some more rain, some more snow, snow for higher elevations, and yeah, some more snow for sun for us. God, snow is on my mind because Seymour got 1 centimeter of fresh snow over the past 24 hours. Let me show you a look at the forecast for tomorrow, and it's pretty unsettled for everyone. Kelowna, your temperatures are back up into the 20s, and we are seeing some good rain across the province. Fire danger is right down. This is all convective, so pockets of showers over the next 24 hours as this big January low slowly makes its way. For us in Vancouver, that will mean a slight risk of a shower tomorrow, but I think as we head into the next couple of days, it's going to look very similar to the day we've had today. Mix of sun and cloud, risk of a stray shower is really our story right through till Thursday. It's Friday that we'll see things ramp up a little bit more as far as the rain risk. Temperatures are recovering slightly over the next couple of days. We'll be back to seasonal, I think, by Thursday and Friday. For us in Metro Vancouver, seasonal is around 18 based on our 30-year average. So we'll get there, but I've got sun right in the forecast until Friday. Then things do look to cloud over a little bit. I've got some summer in the long, long range, Anita. So let's just get through January week, and I think we'll be rewarded.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. Thanks, Jo.
You're welcome.
A nonprofit in Whistler is auctioning custom skateboards handcrafted with Indigenous designs. Proceeds will go toward boosting year-round sports in Indigenous communities. The Indigenous Life Sport Academy sent blank skateboards to artists across the country. The boards were returned with designs featuring old legends and symbols from different First Nations. They are displayed at the Squamish-Lil'wat Cultural Center in Whistler. The auction will run from June 11th to June 24th. Some beautiful designs there. All right, that is it for our show tonight. You can always find our news program online, cbc.ca/BC, and our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock after the National with Dan Burritt. Good night.